The Eight of Cups is indolence, of which is a word that we don't really use that much in common parlance, and yet it could mean a type of profound inactivity, a lethargy, sort of being so sluggish that you just can't find the will to get up and do whatever it is that you'd want to do. And over on the Rider-Waite deck, we perhaps see something like this. There's a great sadness to this card, with the face there in the moon and the sun, and the character abandons his great work. The cups are being stacked up and yet there's one missing. They haven't been able to be bothered to stack it back up, and they've just abandoned it and walked away to do something else. And so this is quite a dark card because of that, and we can see that very simply actually this time on the Tree of Life. It's Hod, and yet it's Hod in the four worlds there, Yet Serah. It's far down on the Tree of Life, so it's not directly in contact with the spirit of Kether from the top, and so perhaps it's not seeing that light, it's not getting the inspiration of which we would be lacking if we were suffering from indolence. Astrologically, as we can see here, it's Saturn in Pisces, and these can be somewhat at odds with each other if they are not properly balanced. And so Pisces, of course, is very spiritual and intuitive. It swims in the currents and the flows of life and the universe, and it's very artistic and finds that spark of creativity, where Saturn is the opposite. It's going to be structure and discipline and law and all this type of thing, and a sort of very heavy, dense physical energy. And so the two put together don't often work. I mean, they can do, but at the face of them, they are quite at odds with one another. Saturn is going to weigh down the emergent joy of Pisces, and so it's going to pretty much overshadow all of the energies, and then of course you find yourself feeling indolent. You feel lazy, essentially. You can't be bothered, and so that's what we can see on the card. It shows some of that poison of which we saw from the last card, and indeed it can be a bit of a complementary and yet opposite card to the Seven of Cups. So the Seven of Cups was like an over-indulgence in physical things and in joy and pleasure, and like hoarding almost, where here with the Eight of Cups, it's not enjoying anything, so it's going to the logical extreme on the other way. This is under-indulging in life. It's the equivalent of just sitting around in an empty room and not caring whether you do anything or buy anything or enjoy anything at all. And so there's that poison, there's that depression, really, that energy of just sorrow and like a sort of thick, treacly inactivity seeping over everything. Nothing can be cultivated in a field of which would be poisoned and dried and cracked, and so that's what we can see here upon the card. And because there's no sunlight, it's a very miserable looking sky and quite a sad looking card in general. All the petals, the lotuses, are drooping, and that's simply because they're not getting the light, such as what we saw over on the Tree of Life there. And when they don't get the light, it won't be long until they droop and they fade away and die. And so it's saying in that respect that we could feel like that. When we draw this card, we can feel like perhaps we are not getting the nourishment of life of which we seek and of which we have known in the past, and so we notice that it's gone. Just like we would notice if the sun went in, the skies go dark, and you say the weather's changed. The weather has changed in our life in that regard, because we're no longer seeing the light, the sun, of which, we open our windows and see the sunny day and we want to go out and explore. Instead, it's dark and miserable, and you just don't want to do it. An interesting symbol on this card are the cups themselves, and so we can actually see here that the cups are broken. Specifically, their handles are broken, and so it's showing that the cup is damaged. It needs to be healed. It needs to be put back together in order for us to be able to pick it up and to actually do something with the water that's in it. If we wanted to drink the water or pour it out, we would be unable to actually pick up the cup until we have first repaired the damage to it. And so that's quite a simple metaphor, really. You can't get out of these type of frames of mind and these type of situations until you've healed in some way what it is that's made you get into that position in the first place. And there's no point just patching it up. just pretending it hasn't happened. You have to actually work at trying to solve the issue, and it can be in very, very small ways. Like if we were going to repair this cup, it would need clay to be kneaded and put on there, and it would need to be dried and fired, and it would take quite a long time, especially to get it back to a position where we could pick it up without fearing that it was going to break again. It doesn't happen overnight, and so it's the same with our own issues and getting out of this this sluggishness of indolence. You need to work at healing what got you into it, even if it's only in tiny little ways, because it's still going to help in some way. Because what we can actually see with how the cups are behaving on this card is that the lower cups, there's actually liquid coming into them, and yet they're not filling up, and so the water's not particularly flowing very well. It doesn't look like it's a healthy flow of water, and it is just not actually filling the cups up. And so this is rather similar to what we had on the last card, but not identical. This is showing that we're just not being nourished with whatever it is that we're doing, so we're not finding what we need to find in perhaps the things around us, or the people around us, or whatever it may be for the individual. We need to feel both physically and spiritually nourished and fed in the joy of life with all of the things around us. As people make this mistake, we've done this before on the actual series, because there is this mistaken suggestion that we shouldn't have physical things, that you should get rid of the ego completely and all this type of thing, and that you could just sit in a small cell like a monk, and that's where you would find true happiness. Well, to be honest, you probably wouldn't. You're going to need to have a balance of things in your life, and we don't identify or worship the things of the physical world because, of course, they fade away and go, and they mean something today and they mean something different tomorrow, and perhaps like we grow out of something, or it no longer fits a purpose for us. But while it does fit a purpose, it's infused with meaning, and so to say that you don't want to have anything physical because you've decided that that's not spiritual and that's not what spiritual people would do is a big mistake. You need to find a meaning in things and understand that it's not a physical object as such. It's an object with meaning, and it's the meaning of it that makes it something that we love, for example. And that's actually a little helper to starting to get out of indolence, and we can see it on the card. It's a very grim looking card, this, and yet there is still that glimmer of light on the horizon. So there is still a sun somewhere over the sea, over the part of the landscape that we can't see. And it's almost as if the observer of this card is asking that sun to come towards them. It's saying, come on, it's time for the sun to rise on my patch of land here. And we could go off towards the sun, or wait for it to come to us, or perhaps meet it halfway. But either way, the symbol is showing that this state of darkness won't last forever, because the sun will come round to you, or you can go to it, and so you will feel, whether you're waiting for the sun or whether you're going to go straight to it, you feel a desire for its warmth. You feel a desire for its light, otherwise it wouldn't interest you. And so that sun, that horizon, is the spark of promise in this card, that no matter how dark the night, the morning will still come afterwards. And yet at the time when you're actually in that dry and poisoned field and vista like what we've got on the card, it can feel like that's a long way off, or maybe that it's not even going to come at all. Crowley describes this really poetically in the Book of Thoth. About this card, he says that it is time and sorrow descending upon pleasure. And that suggestion of time there, that you feel like you're going to be stuck in this situation forever. Crowley also likens this card to Wagner's Parsifal, and in specifically a character in there known as Kundry. And Kundry is a character we may not be familiar with, and she's essentially she's called a wild woman, but she's like a hag archetype, of whom at the other side of the horizon, so at the other side of the mountains, is a beautiful maiden. And so she's both the crone and the maiden there, so she's a duality. And in Parsifal, she meets with Parsifal, and she attempts to woo him with a kiss, this is rather unsuccessful, and yet it unlocks within him compassionate feelings towards the Keeper of the Grail, and this is all to do with the story in it, and makes possible everything that comes from there. So the restoration of the Holy Spear, the Holy Grail, and Kundry's actual death, of which he has longed for. And so it's this unlocking of compassion, this unlocking of the light, perhaps even just like metaphorically opening one's eyes and seeing the things around us and saying, yeah, these are wonderful things. They do mean something to me. They've got memories, they've got love in them, or they're just fun things or beautiful things. And that could unlock something in us, like a little spark that says, yeah, let's go out and do that. Let's go out and put our energy towards that, and then we shall get out of that stagnation of indolence. We've found another project for us to work on. We've found something to stimulate us emotionally, of which is lacking in this card. It's an emptiness of which needs to be filled, and yet it can't just be filled with anything. You have to find that spark, that creativity, that thing to get you out of the mire and take you away to continue your journey.